The Portuguese league isn't 4 times as good as the Championship.
The rhetoric is now from Rangers that it's another Russell Martin.
But they're not going to attract a manager currently in a Premier League job.
There's a lot worse.
I think
Frank Lampard could well.
Would you take him over Carsley?
Hello guys, welcome back to the Sportsman Untitled, and we've got a manager's special for you this international break, and I've got 2 men for the job to discuss these issues with me, starting with Conor McGilligan and Gab Sutton. Thanks for coming on, guys, because it's been our first managerial change of the season, and Gab, no surprise, is come at Watford. They've let go of Paulo Pezzolano after just 10 games, and guess who's back? Javi Gracia.
Yeah, it's a familiar face for them, Javi Gracia at Watford. I do feel, I did have a feeling that with Pezzolano it wasn't going to work out. I think it's one thing having a good promotion record in South America. I think 1 or 2 people had spoken to him, you know, from his work in Spain, were maybe not quite as convinced, suggested the lack of adaptability. I think some of his tactics at Watford were questionable. I don't think 4-4-2, which he played in one of the recent home games, was necessarily a great fit for this squad of players. I think it's more of a 4-2-3 kind of squad. 4-2-3-1. So it hasn't surprised me hugely that it's not worked out.
Benjamin Bloom said to me last week, had a little dig at me, I think he did, Conor, because he pointed out the fact that Pezzolano had 7 points from his last 3 games and it still wasn't enough, and a man Leeds fans are familiar with coming into the job.
Yeah, it's a young squad, isn't it? Really young squad, and I think there's been a few murmurs from inside the camp, if you're to believe reports, that they're not quite happy with Pezzolano's strict approach. Interesting how Gracia's come in already, and he's mentioned Loser, he's mentioned Georgie, and he's mentioned Bar being effectively key to his plans going forward, specifically Bar as well, who doesn't feel like it's kind of worked really with Pezzolano. I feel it might be more of a 4-3-3, and I think that will be very attacking. We've seen Gracia deploy that before as well. Highly successful coach at Watford, probably their most, well, it's legendary status there, probably since, you know, Peter Taylor's probably the last, you know, big legend from Gracia onwards. But
what did you make of him at Leeds, Conor, Javi Gracia?
Yeah,
he wasn't there for very long, was he?
No, he wasn't. I think he was he was a good manager, but at the wrong time. I think what's really important about Gracia, and I get why Leeds made the appointment, it's a man manager. It's bringing someone in who can put the arm around the shoulder, and I think that's where what Watford need. They've gone, as I said, from a very strict manager in Pezzolano to Gracia, arm around the shoulder, young squad. I think it's a really good appointment, to be honest with you. And I think it's gonna you know, tug on the heartstrings of the Watford fans as well.
They did that with the Deeney announcement video with him meeting Gracia as well. They did all of that thing. What was interestingly is reportedly, Gab, he was sacked for not picking players who had a certain agent, Arnaud Moggi Bayat, if I pronounced that correctly. Club have obviously denied that, but it's the sort of thing you could see being true at a club like Watford. Yeah,
I think there is possibly a power question mark with Watford and the way that they operate. I always thought it was funny when they have Gianluca Nani as sporting director, who's also sporting director in Udinese, and that kind of raises some issues from a logistical point of view, whether you can be a present on a day-to-day basis at a club in England and one in Italy. So I think there's definitely some question marks about how stable Watford are in terms of the day-to-day side of things. At the same time, I think when it comes to Watford, I was actually really excited by a lot of their recruitment in terms of the potential upsides of a lot of the players they brought in, particularly Nestor Ivan Kunda, who I think is a huge talent and could be anything. But the man management, as Conor I think really articulately pointed out, you need good man management and good motivation for a young squad. Older players are better at looking after themselves, whereas young players need to be looked after correctly.
It was that video in the changing room, wasn't it, of him giving that kind of Churchillian speech, and the players, you could tell, weren't quite having it, and the fans were obviously not too happy with him singing "You're getting sacked" in the morning to their own manager, even when they weren't losing games. So they're in a decent position, Watford, 11th, but it's now 22 different managers since the Pozzo family took over the club in 2012. Quick quiz question for you both.
You're not going to ask me to name them all.
Not name them all. Can you name the longest serving Watford manager during that time? Gav, we'll start with you.
One promotion with Jokanovic, but he wasn't there for...
This is in terms of games managed as well.
Games managed, okay. I mean, is it Garcia?
He's second, I think, in terms of games managed. He was the longest serving in terms of length. Conor, do you know the answer to this one? There you go. Gianfranco Zola, 75 games in charge he had. Conor, of the 23 different managerial spells in charge of the club, 8 of them have now lasted for 15 games or fewer. Wilder, Ranieri, Edwards and now Pezzolano have been less than 15 matches since 21-22. Is it just Watford, or does the club really need to change? They just seem to do it. It's a joke now. It's a running joke, isn't it? They sack their manager.
Yeah, I mean, you look at you talk to any Watford fan, and they know it's a basket case of a club right now. It just is. But like you just quite rightly said, it just appears to be Watford, and the Pozzo family have been there for so long now, and obviously they've had that almost like co-alignment with Udinese as well. It's brought success. We've seen that previously, especially when you look at Watford and being on the cusp of Europe under Gracia not so long ago. But there has been, like you just mentioned, Ranieri, Wilder. I mean, you go through the list, and we were,
Hodgson was there briefly as well.
You forget, don't you?
Yeah.
You absolutely forget since 2012 the amount of managers. It's ridiculous, and then you question the continuity and how that's going to build any sort of consistency. But Gracia, at least we know, is as a foundation at Watford. The fans are all on board with the appointment as well. You're hoping for a Watford fan's sake that this can be the appointment, because it's happened before. Was it 20 months, ish months? That can maybe elongate this time, because it must. I can't imagine. I mean, from a Leeds United fan's perspective, we had that with Massimo Cellino for a period of time where it was manager after manager after manager. So I can understand it. But this has been, was it 2012, 2013? It's staggering, really.
It really is staggering. They are in a decent place in the table, though, Gab. They're not that far off the playoffs. They've got some top players that Conor's already touched upon. Bar, Aaron Kunda, Chaptadze, Loser as well.
Yeah.
Can they make the playoffs this season now they've made this managerial change?
Yeah, I think they've got a squad that's, in terms of potential upsides, if they get it right, is a very high ceiling. I think for me, what I'd be looking at is, can they add that core? Because you look at the squad that won promotion in 2015, they had a nice balance. Craig Cathcart, for instance, players, Troy Deeney. I don't think they necessarily have that this time round, and that's what I would be looking at to try and fine-tune that balance. I think it's great to be investing in these high potential assets, but I think you need some experienced players who can manage the dressing room as well. It can't all be on the manager.
Absolutely right. As I said, this is a manager's special today, and we've got an awful lot to talk about from the Championship. One out of work manager, Conor, at the moment, hotly linked with the Rangers job, is Danny Rohl. Kieran McKenna also slightly in contention, rumours circling that he might be getting that job. But Danny Rohl looks to be the most likely candidate right now. What does this say about kind of the quality of managers in the Championship, and what do you think of this link to Rangers?
Yeah, I think and there's two things to talk about. The quality of manager that we know that Danny Rohl is. I think there's a conversation there, but I think there's a conversation also with the scenario now at Rangers and someone like Danny Rohl and another manager maybe of Danny Rohl's level going into Rangers right now. I think there's two different conversations there. If we're just talking about the level of Danny Rohl, we're all very aware, and maybe it's been downplayed how good he is. I'm seeing a lot online from maybe Rangers fans and other fans in and around that sort of sphere saying, he's finished 12th with Sheffield Wednesday, but the context is being completely missed. Completely missed. I remember seeing a Barry Bannon interview around about 3 or 4 months ago, and he said, because the rhetoric is now from Rangers, it's another Russell Martin. It is not for me. I mean, they're polar opposites in a sense. Russell Martin wouldn't adapt. Danny Rohl went into a Sheffield Wednesday side where he had to adapt. It wasn't passing out from the back football, of which he wanted to implement. He wants to play that style of football, high pressing, passing out from the back style football. They had to go direct with the profiles that they had and then have like second phase transition in terms of pressing. So a very pragmatic manager. I love his style of football. I think he did wonders with a very below average Sheffield Wednesday side in the circumstances as well with Chansiri, etc., which Wednesday fans will know all about. Massive fan of Danny Rohl. I think he's been underplayed a little bit. I think Rangers would I think it'd be a really good appointment. His resolve will be tested, though, if he is to go there with the situation at Rangers now, and that can't be underplayed.
The other point I would make as a distinction between Rohl and Russell Martin is I think Rohl's side have a plan for what to do if they lose the ball. They always tend to attack in a 3-2-5 shape, and the configuration of that can change. It's like a team sheet 4-2-3-1 a lot of the time, but it's in possession it often ends up being a 3-2-5. And I think, it's quite zonal the way his teams play, and they're very good at defensive transitions. And when they've conceded goals, it's often been because of individual errors from defenders, not necessarily how the team's set up with the ball. So I think with better players, I think Rohl will be able to get his ideas across very nicely. But I completely agree with Conor. I think he's more...
And just adding to what Gab said there, this is a guy who's worked under Hansi Flick, Ralph Hasenhüttl, and has a high pedigree in the game at such a young age. There's a lot worse that Rangers could do right now in terms of a managerial appointment. We don't know if this is going to happen. Obviously, McKenna's been spoken about. I don't think that's going to happen with Kieran McKenna. The eyes will be set on the Premier League, I think, for him once again. But Danny Rohl, I don't mind. But yeah, maybe it's right to talk about Rangers right now in the situation there. And if
I don't think they can get anyone better than Danny Rohl. I know we've spoken about Rohl so many times. I think Rangers are a really difficult club where obviously they're absolutely massive and their fan base is absolutely huge, but they're not going to attract, a manager currently in a Premier League job or a Premier League manager of that level. They're going to have to maybe look at managers in the Championship, and I understand completely that the Russell Martin thing couldn't have gone any worse, and they're stung by that, and they don't want to go back to the Championship. But Daniel Rohl, Gab, is someone you've spoken about as being able to manage in the Champions League. The job he did at Wednesday, I think he even lost 5 of his first 6 games at Wednesday, and they were really struggling. He overcame all those issues and put together a really good team that were challenging for the Championship playoffs. His ceiling is so high. I think Rangers would be quite lucky to have him.
Yeah, I think so too. I definitely think he's got the potential to manage in the Premier League, Champions League. So I definitely think he's somebody who could take Rangers forward in Europe, both in Europe and domestically.
I think the problem with it is with everything that's happened with Russell Martin and the chaos that ensued there. Bear in mind the last game he had to get a police escort out. They'd win a game in the last minute with, Aaron scoring the win. I think it was against Livingston, might have been another side. Let me know in the comments. But they then, straight after they scored the winning goal, were still singing Martin out. And it's got to a point now where I think if you're a Rangers fan, you want a guarantee. And pulling on that heartstring again, we can go back to Javi Gracia. The appointment going to Watford, it pulls on the heartstrings a little bit. You get Gerrard back at Rangers.
He said no, though.
And exactly, so. and that's the point. But he's had several meetings with the Rangers higher ups, and they've not managed to get it over the line. The problem is now, whoever they go and get is a downturn from Steven Gerrard, according to Rangers fans. I think Danny Rohl is a better manager than Steven Gerrard, a much better manager. However, he broke the cycle, didn't he? Gerrard up there, he won the league. He took it away from Celtic. So it's then going to be this very angry fan base right now because of the ownership, because of Russell Martin. Whoever goes in now, I think you've got to be really careful as a manager, and obviously very careful as the higher ups at Rangers, who you then go and get as a personality as well.
I completely understand that, and I was going to say I think Rohl has done very well at working at a club, not in similar circumstances in terms of the size of the club or the fan base, but with difficulties going on in the background. That's what he's proven at Sheffield Wednesday. So I'd like to see him at a bigger club and fighting for a title. And I think it'd be a really good appointment, Gab. Any final words on Rohl?
I think I'm really excited about what he can do with a more stable infrastructure, because I think his hands were tied at Sheffield Wednesday, and I think maybe one of the reasons why he's taken a while to go back in and get another job, and I'm sure he wouldn't have been short of offers since the end of last season and even the back end of that campaign, but I think he's keen to take the right one.
Absolutely. And we're going to discuss now some Championship managers and ask you guys a few questions as well, starting with another quiz question for you both. Gab, who is the longest serving manager in the Championship who's been with their current club the longest?
I think John Mousinho might be the longest serving.
He's in the top 3, he's third.
He's in the top
Conor?
3.
McKenna's second. Number 1? Couple of promotions under his belt.
I'd have said
3 promotions under his belt.
Oh, Phil Parkinson.
Phil Parkinson, number 1, 4 years and 100 days.
Well
They're
done,
the top 3. A word on each of them, Gab, please. Massinho, starting with him, maybe?
Well, one thing I love about Massinho is that he's very good at framing situations positively, and I think that's a really important aspect of leadership, and I think that's one of the things that I'm sure he's studied courses in leadership during his time as a player. He was a set-piece coach at Oxford United, and I think that's why he absolutely stormed the interview at Portsmouth. Richard Hughes, sporting director there, gave him the job, and it was a bit of a risk at the time because you're taking Oxford United's fourth-choice centre-half to become Portsmouth's head coach, and there would have been people questioning it at the time, but actually John Massinho has proven an inspired choice. I think he's a very good technical coach, but most importantly, perhaps for me, it's his leadership qualities and his charismatic man management.
Absolutely. Do you want to have a word on Phil Parkinson as well? Because I think the last time you were on, Conor, you were getting a bit of stick for saying that he might be out of a job in a few months, and the Wrexham fans bit back. I think he'll be all right for a little bit. I think he's actually steadied the ship a little. The squad looks good. Seems to have found his first 11. Changed your mind?
Yeah. I think the starting 11 is massive. I think it's really important as well to look at the fact that there's been a lot of moving parts at Wrexham, and as a manager gluing that together when he's obviously had that group that I had in League One, a lot of new personalities coming in, big personalities coming in as well, being able to jot that together. Maybe a little bit understated by myself, potentially, Simon. Yeah, so...
Is that an apology for Wrexham fans?
No, it's not yet. We'll wait and see where they finish.
Well, there are obviously a lot of out-of-work managers in the Championship right now, and we're in this kind of part of the season between the second and third international breaks where clubs do tend to make changes. Out-of-work managers that we can discuss here: Michael Carrick, Johannes Hofthorup, Russell Martin. We've already talked about Danny Rohl. Any of those bunch you think would do a good job back in the Championship, Gab?
I think Johannes Hoftorup's stock is possibly increased by how Norwich haven't kicked on after parting company with him, because they've signed a lot more PK'd players with the expectation of pushing on and being a top 6 team, and it hasn't happened so far. So for Torup to have finished mid-table with a team looking possibly a lot more impressive at their best last season, albeit they were very streaky, I think that shows that he can develop players, and maybe with a bit more time at Norwich he might have built something. I also think you've got to look at Michael Carrick at Middlesbrough, because although I always felt Carrick as an in-possession coach very good, I think if he can learn certain things and find those extra ingredients in his next job, then I think Carrick can build a very competitive team at this level.
How do you feel about Carrick, Conor? Because he did a reasonable job at Middlesbrough. It didn't end quite right, and I guess the opposite to Thorup is that Middlesbrough have gone on since he left the club, so it'd be interesting to see where he ends up next. I still think he's a good manager. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see where Rob Edwards' Borough end up. The second now, obviously, but there is a long way to go.
Who's top?
Yeah,
cheers, man.
I always get on it. But I think with the player sales as well under Carrick, that's something to bear in mind as well. Some top players been sold underneath him, of which you then have to shape a squad together again. And with Middlesbrough, there's always that pressure to get into the top 6, potentially even the top 2, obviously. And with Gab, I think tactically he's a very astute manager. Michael Carrick, I think he'll get his shout again, and there has been. I'm sure we'll get onto it in a segment or two, but there's been, always Premier League interest in Michael Carrick, and there's probably a reason behind that.
You mentioned about being tactically impressed. Of the managers currently in a job in the Championship, who's impressed you the most tactically this season?
Strangely enough, I would say Rob Edwards.
Yeah, that's good.
I would say Rob Edwards, and obviously they were playing a back 4, weren't they, with Carrick, and I think going to a back 3 is difficult. I think the transition is difficult for players who've always been wedded to a certain system. I think there is an argument the midfield looks a little bit more cohesive now as well. I think Morris has been excellent.
Yeah.
I think he's probably even overshadowed Hayden Hackney this season, which I think is some mean feat, you know. So, but I think there's been existing players as well who've really managed to acclimatise to the system, and I think Borough look really strong. They look really strong. Good acquisitions off the depth off the bench as well. Tactically, I think they've looked really good.
How about you, Gab? Any managers that have caught your eye this season?
I've been so impressed with Frank Lampard, because as much as...
Ding, ding, ding. So the Coventry bell.
Go on, Gab.
Yeah, I think one of the things that held me back from putting Coventry in my top 2 before the season was, would they have enough depth? But and I still think that's a valid question mark, because I do think it's a reasonably light squad in terms of numbers and quality on quality. But I do think that the best 11, if it stays largely fit, fresh and available for the whole season, I think you get a top 2.
I hope so. I certainly hope so. I've been really impressed with Julian Stefan at QPR, my pick there, because I think bouncing back from such a heavy defeat, you lose 7-1, there's question marks all over the place. There's wondering if you should change your style, change your system. I think what he's done to kind of regroup that group of players, put Kone in there, has changed quite a lot going forward. I think they're so exciting. I think all their attacking options can be interchanged almost. I think they've got so much going forward. They're in the playoffs right now. I think they can probably stay there for the rest of the season. I've been really impressed with him.
It really tests the character of a manager as well, doesn't it? Losing that heavily, and it's embarrassing, isn't it?
Yeah,
coming
absolutely.
back from that and getting stronger and tactically adapting as well. Really impressive.
On the other end of things, Conor, which Championship manager do you think has to improve sharpish and find other solutions to his current problems?
Chris Wilder. Yeah.
3 defeats out of 4. He's not actually been able to
turn it around
so far.
Yeah, and once again, a superb manager. It feels like there's maybe more problems at Sheffield United. I still think there is a massive Vinny Sousa hole there, of which they've still not been able to plug.
He's alluded to that as well. He's almost alluded to the fact that he's not been there over the summer to build this squad, and now this squad isn't as good as the one he had last season because of these big Ahmed Ozic as well. Vinny Sousa gone. I know they kept Harmer and stuff, but it's not as good as it was last season, and he's finding it difficult.
Yeah, it was interesting as well when he was talking about when they played Hull last week. He was talking about McBurney, and he was mentioning that there was conversations in the background and all this sort of stuff, and he was always saying let's come back, but apparently he mentioned that the management last time wasn't fond of bringing Ollie back. So obviously then, he goes to Hull, but that'd have been a brilliant signing for Sheffield United, I think. Another character, but a brilliant Championship player as well. He's got to figure it out. It's tough at Sheffield United now. That team cannot be where it is, and they cannot be below the City rivals as well, with the context around that club as well.
Same question for you, Gab. Championship manager you'd like to see improve?
Liam Manning at Norwich City, because 8 points from their first 9 games is a poor start, but then I think in a couple of those games, like away at Coventry, which was a real smash and grab point, even though Coventry equalised late on, Norwich very fortunate to get anything from that game. Stoke City away as well. A couple of games where they've relied on Vladan Kovacevic, the goalkeeper, to save their bacon. I think their home form and performances, especially how they played against Wrexham a couple of weeks ago, was absolutely appalling. When you consider they brought in players like Harry Darling, Jakub Medic, they've brought in peak-age players that with the intention of challenging for promotion, and now that's not happening. I think people are asking all the big questions at Norwich City of the owners, of Ben Napper, of Liam Manning, of the players that they've recruited in, and again, we could be looking at another rebuild at Norwich City.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned peak age players, because I think there's a few obviously wide players and attacking players at Norwich that have been brought in that are slightly younger and unproven at the level. But then you do have Harry Darling, you do have Josh Sargent, you have Kenny McLean, who's been around for donkey's years, and you think that is a squad that's good enough. And I don't think you can underestimate the impact losing against Ipswich can have on the feeling around the football club. And also, they can't win a home game, and that's where most of your fans see you at home. Can't win a home game, lost a 16-year unbeaten record against their fiercest rivals. I think he's got a massive job to turn it around. I don't know if he can do it.
I agree. I think...
You mentioned Giannis Hoff-Turp last season.
Yeah.
There's Norwich fans who weren't particularly keen on seeing him sacked, and now they're thinking, would we be in a better place if we'd kept him?
That's possibly a more stable position, because they have brought in a lot of players, and to be relying on your goalkeeper so much and to not see much of a style of play and an identity and a starting point, it feels like Norwich City are back to square one, and I think that's a really frustrating thing for the Yellow Army.
Absolutely. Conor, question for you now. Which Championship managers do you think could thrive at Premier League clubs who will likely part ways with their managers this season? We've seen a few managers make the step up in the past. Who are you looking at the current crop? I mean, there's the Nottingham Forest job, which always seems to be available on rotation at the minute, as West Ham, these managers who have been sacked, and these Premier League clubs near the bottom who might look to the Championship.
None. I think the level now is so high at Premier League standard. I think it's you even look at, I guess, your mid-bracket sides, which is it's utterly disrespectful to say this, but generically, you look at Bournemouth, Iriola, his reputation was ridiculous when they went and got him. Brighton getting Herzler, huge reputation in the game. Palace, Frankfurt, Glasgow. I think the only way now you get, because I know there's going to be comments about Lampard and, others. McKenna is another one, obviously, who I know was quite close to the Brighton job before Herzler. But I think the only way you get managers now, similar to Daniel Farke, probably similar to that of Chris Wilder, is going up with that team and that team sticking by you. I think that's the only way. I do not think you get any Premier League club right now going for a Championship manager. I think it's too risky.
Even if a Burnley, Leeds or Sunderland, obviously Sunderland doing very well right now, even if a Burnley or Leeds sat their manager, you don't think they'd go back to the Championship?
Who? Let's have this hypothetical conversation then. If Leeds sat the manager or Burnley sat the manager, who are they going to go get from the Championship that's going to improve?
They're not getting Lampard, are they?
Leeds aren't.
I actually agree with you. It's pretty brutal, but
it's a shame how it is a shame how it is now. It really is, but I don't think it happens.
You've got to look at the facts as well. Parker and Farke, rhyming there, both got 100 points in the Championship. None of the other managers currently in the Championship have done that. So why would you swap one for one who's less proven in the second two?
And it might change the tide as well. If Farke keeps Leeds up, if Parker keeps Burnley up, it might change the tide. You might get Premier League clubs thinking, okay, actually we might be able to take a risk on a championship manager right now if you'd put it in that bracket. But I think the only one, we're all...
Sorry, just on that, you've inspired a thought in me in terms of players as well, Conor, because so you look at somebody like Victor Gyökeres, for example, who was amazing for Coventry City, but Premier League clubs he didn't get signed by a Premier League club after that 22-23 season. He actually got the big money was paid for Gyökeres when he did it for Sporting Lisbon. But you wouldn't say the Portuguese league and the Championship are necessarily... The Portuguese league isn't 4 times as good as the Championship, but it was 4 times Gyökeres' value when he did get that move. So it does suggest that the Championship is maybe undervalued, both in terms of managers and players.
Yeah, 100%. You could even use the example of... you could even use the example of Daniel Farke when he didn't go up with Leeds. Okay, use that as an example. He's done unbelievably well. He faced adversity in the summer with all the player sales, an absolute exodus of players leaving the club. This is just an example that's come to my mind. No Premier League clubs then came in for him after he failed to get Leeds up, or the accumulation of points over a set period. There's not been any Premier League clubs who've come in for him. I think the gap is massive now. It's a shame to see, but I think it's huge.
I think hopefully the Gyökeres example is a good one, but I think Premier League clubs still need to act quicker. Man United should just pay £25 million for Hayden Hackney right now, and he would improve their midfield. And I think that's been the case for a lot of Man United players, for a lot of Man United signings where they've waited and signed them afterwards. A lot of other clubs I completely agree with. But this is a manager special, so let's get back to the managers. And I want to debate on the next England manager, because I've got a few feelings about Frank Lampard.
Right.
I think he's a perfect fit.
No way.
I think Thomas Tuchel has got a deal to the end of the World Cup, and I don't see a better candidate. I think the England manager should be English, first of all.
Right.
And I don't see a better English manager really out there, apart from Eddie Howe, than Frank Lampard. You said no way. Argue your case.
So I would throw a name in the hat, and I was quite annoyed that he didn't get the job anyway. Lee Carsley. Back-to-back Euro Championships, has come through the development in this country. Obviously started at Birmingham and has worked all the way through when it comes to England. As I said, back-to-back European Championships. Players have improved at England to go back to their parent clubs. I think notoriously it happens the other way round. I think he's riddled with England DNA when it comes to coaching experience. I have absolutely no idea why we didn't appoint him anyway. I think it was a 3-0 win under Carsley to start off with.
Do you think part of that is the anti-Southgate thing? Where Southgate got promoted from the under-21s. I think Southgate was amazing for the first team, but was there a case of, no, we need a manager who's going to win things? Which obviously Carsley does for the under-21s, so it's very strange they didn't go for it.
Yeah, and it followed, like you said, but it follows that Southgate mantra of which the FA wanted. They wanted that again. It's bizarre that they've moved away from it again to go to Tuchel. Now, I'm a fan of Tuchel, of course, but I think it would be... I understand the Lampard links, but to move away from Lee Carsley for me makes absolutely no sense. Why would you choose Frank Lampard over Lee Carsley? Is it just management at the domestic table? Because obviously you look at Lampard, he's at Chelsea, he's at Everton, hasn't he? Derby, Coventry now. But Lee Carsley has got that experience. He's got back-to-back European Championships. Surely he would be preferred over someone like Frank Lampard.
And also, if you look at the Spain manager who won the Euros, he'd been promoted from their youth team, hadn't he? So from a continuity perspective, somebody that knows the under-21s, because maybe we're reaching a point where we'd like a new cycle of players, and maybe someone that's going to manage the under-21s could be a valuable thing in terms of that relationship with the playing squad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Tuchel, I think, will probably go unless he wins the World Cup, which is obviously a very difficult task. We could get to the semi-final or final, and he's got a short contract, and we're here to win. I just think in the summer we might be looking at a couple of English managers. Carsley's obviously a very good shout, but there's that star quality of Lampard, which I think is you know what I mean? Golden generation.
What does that mean?
Golden generation. He's got the goal in South Africa off the bye. He's got a script to rewrite. He's a great manager. Tactically, he's doing really well this season. I mean, I don't want to argue it too much. I'd rather he was still Coventry manager, but I think Frank Lampard could well be the next England manager.
Would you take him over Carsley?
No. Well, what?
You didn't expect that shout, did you, from me?
It was very good. Can I say it right? I'd rather Frank Lampard was a club manager than Lee Carsley, but I think an international manager is almost a different job, isn't it?
Yeah, and I guess, Carsley's used to this now as well. I think Gab makes a really good point. If we're to see, we've seen a lot of the youngsters coming up into the first team right now. If you've got that almost man manager, which he is, very tactically astute as well, if he's then coming up with a lot of these youth prospects into the first team, it's got to be a positive thing. It's Carsley all day, every day, and he should be the manager right now, for me.
Star quality Frank. Imagine those young players going, it will be showing them his videos. They see this goal I scored for England.
Wow, yes.
Carsley can't compete with that, can he?
Work for himself out.
A couple more questions on managers for you. We talked about him a little bit earlier, Steven Gerrard. I was interested to ask you, Gab, what do you think his next job will be? And could it be an EFL Championship job or maybe even lower down? I'm wondering if Gerrard's going to have to jump back in at a slightly lower level, or if he's going to be wary of doing that because of what happened to Wayne Rooney.
I don't know if Gerrard gets a Championship job, because he's had a lot. His work with Rangers was brilliant, don't get me wrong, but struggled at Aston Villa and then struggled over in Saudi Arabia, I think it was. It feels like a while since he's had, and I don't know. Also, the Rangers' success was when Celtic had Neil Lennon. It wasn't against Postecoglou or Brendan Rodgers. So I don't know if I would go for Gerrard. I think maybe as a League One job or League Two, but
really. I think he's too big a name when there's. I hate to be like clubs like Birmingham and Wrexham, because Birmingham have been stung by doing this before.
Yeah.
But I think it's not a Frank Lampard thing, but it is a Frank Lampard thing. That golden generation, star quality, big name. People are going to be watching. It's important. I think Gerrard would get one of those jobs.
Yeah, I think he'd get a Championship job. I do think that. I think it comes back to the conversation again of this is obviously formerly of Aston Villa, then he had a good start at Aston Villa as well. He broke the Celtic cycle, which is a massive achievement. It is a massive achievement with obviously what they were going for as well. I think it was, did he break it at 10? I'm not sure, just before that. But did a good job up at Rangers as well, and they weren't on the same financial plane really as Celtic. So you've got to bear that in mind as well. I think, like you've said, I think we've seen with football over the past 5 years, names do mean something with certain jobs that certain managers get. I know that'll probably frustrate you, Gab, but I do think, interesting that what Gerrard said, I don't know if you caught him on heard his podcast with Rio Ferdinand as well, and he mentioned it has to be the right club. I feel with Gerrard, he's probably going to look at maybe a big club being in the Championship and maybe sort of advertise himself for that job if that ever comes around. What club that will be, I'm not sure.
But do you not think I look at somebody like Richie Wellens at Leyton Orient, getting them into the playoffs last season on a bottom 8 budget in League One. I think people like him should be in the mix for Championship jobs. I mean, it was linked with the Luton job, and they went with Jack Wilshere.
That's what I was going to bring up. Jack Wilshere's got the Luton job after 5 games in Norwich, I think it was, but barely even that. And obviously, he's a very highly rated coach, but he's a name, isn't he?
But this is the thing. I would argue that, going to that, if we're moving on to Luton, I think there's an argument that they've gone with young coaches in the past and it's worked. So, they took a chance on Nathan Jones and they took a chance on Rob Edwards. But I would argue after the foundations were laid, because it was John Still who got them out of the conference in 2014, and experienced football person that's been there and done it before. And I think that Luton have reached that point off the back of successive relegations, struggling in League One. I think they probably need a safe pair of hands, someone who's proven, just to get the ship moving in the right direction. And maybe then at that point you can take a chance on a young, talented coach. But I think they need to put a framework in place first. And I think, I don't know if this was the moment for a gamble for Luton. But I would like to come back to the overall point that managers who are doing really well in League Two and League One, why aren't they getting these championship opportunities?
Dave Challoner's another one, isn't he?
Exactly,
just promotion after promotion. Right, is the international break, so we should have a quick word on international football. Don't know if I'm springing you on this. Which championship player will play the biggest part in next summer's World Cup? And I've noticed a nice little story during this international break, because Sonte Hansen, the Middlesbrough winger, he played youth football for the Netherlands throughout his career, made his debut for Curaçao in a 2-0 win over Jamaica that takes them top of their qualifying group, and they could shock the world by making the World Cup if they stay it. So he's an outside shout for me. Conor, Northern Ireland as well, they're in the hunt for a place at the World Cup, and they've got quite a few championship stars. It's like the championship all-stars, that national team, isn't it?
Yeah, massive win as well recently against Slovakia, which I think was quite unexpected, which obviously put them into the top two on goal difference ahead of Slovakia, which is massive. But I really like the look of Isaac Price, Galbraith as well. Been fantastic as well this season, obviously for Swansea. Looking at the Republic of Ireland squad at this moment in time, just bringing them into it as well. You're actually looking at, I don't think I've ever done this in my lifetime, but I'm actually looking at the Northern Ireland squad right now and thinking there's more exciting profiles in that side than the Republic of Ireland side, which is just never happens. That just shows of the the level, and there could be an outside chance now, which ahead of Slovakia right now, I think need to understand how monumental that is. It could be a brilliant achievement, so we could see all of those. The World Cup, who knows?
Any names for you, Gab, you want to throw in there?
I think Luke Connell of Ireland is one that I'm excited about. He really impressed me at Barnsley a few seasons ago. He's kind of gone under the radar a little bit in recent years, but I'm hopeful that under Conor Hourihane, another Irishman, hopefully he can come back to the force, because I do see a lot of potential in Luke Connell.
Shout out as well to Iran Kunda, who
scored again.
Scored for the Socceroos against Canada, which is no. You're going to talk about my accent then, weren't you?
Yeah, it was interesting. He scored a slide tackle. I don't know if you saw the goal.
Yeah,
absolutely superb. Obviously, we've talked about him enough on this show. Can't wait to see what he can do. Hopefully, at the World Cup next summer. Right, we've got 3 games to quickly preview for the upcoming weekend. And Gab, I want you to start with Oxford versus Derby. How do you see this one going? It seems like a bit of a relegation battle at the bottom between these two.
Yeah, I think so. I think from Oxford's point of view, there's a little bit of frustration from Gerrard's point of view. I think he's a very diplomatic manager, and I don't think he's someone who's going to cause a fuss. But I think you can tell, even for someone as reasonable as him, that he's maybe not ecstatic with the summer business and would have wanted a little bit more. Not helped by Cameron Brannigan starting the season slightly injured, so they're kind of been a little bit on the back foot, Oxford. And I think that's been tricky for them. They did get a big win at Bristol City, haven't quite followed that up as well as they would have liked, with just 1 point from the last 3 games. So I think it's been a tough start for Oxford United, and they've got to get back to the solidity that we associated with them in the second half of last season. Derby County have steadied the ship recently, just the 3 defeats for them all season, but only the 1 win. Now I do hope that Patrick Aguiman coming back is going to make a difference for them. He got off the mark last time out before the international interlude. Hopefully he can be the solution to him, because I think him and Carlton Morris could forge a handy strike pairing.
They love a draw, don't they, Derby? What's your score prediction?
I'm going to go 1-0 to Derby.
I'll go for a 1-1. Conor, what are you saying on Oxford Derby?
1-1.
1-1. It's playing it safe, aren't we?
Yeah,
on the fence for that
safe.
one. I'll come to you for Sheffield United Watford, 3:00 on Saturday. What do you think of this one? Obviously, new manager at Watford, returning manager at Blades, who can't win again.
It's a tough game, this, for Sheffield United. I think we've mentioned obviously Iran Kunda coming back, and obviously the right winger been full of beans after his fantastic he's won the Aussies the game, didn't he, in Canada, so it's obviously massive for him on a personal level, but I think as well Loser been involved in proceedings in potentially a 4-3-3 is very exciting. Barbing back into proceedings as well. Jack Fatadze, I can't wait to see him under Javi Gracia as well. So they've got a lot of very, very exciting profiles, Watford, and obviously we've got to bear in mind as well that they are 9 points ahead of Sheffield United at this moment in time. We saw Charlton go to Sheffield United, Bramall Lane not long ago, and nick a 1-0 win. I'm backing Watford for this. I'm backing a 1-0 Watford win. I think there's still massive problems at Sheffield United. I think Gracia is going to get Watford really playing in a way, and I think that man management style is going to bring the whole group together. And let's bear in mind as well, those players have got 2 wins in the last 3.
Absolutely. That would be seismic if Watford get a win. Gab, what are you saying for a score prediction?
I'm going to say 0-0 because I think Sheffield United will be focused all on just stabilising and getting some defensive foundations in place. Last season they had Vinny Souza at the base, and that freed up City Peck and it gave them those foundations. They don't have that solidity in terms of individual midfielders this season because they haven't replaced Souza well enough. So it's going to be really important that they get that solidity in the collective, and I think that's going to be one of the first priorities even for Chris Wilder.
I'll go for a 1-0 Blades win, just on the balance. I think that Watford might be a bit slow starting under Gracia, but we'll have to wait and see.
13 goal difference.
Yeah, they've
Sheffield
been shocking.
United,
They've scored 3 goals all season, so I'll back them to score a 4th. Final game we're going to preview is Leicester versus Portsmouth. Evening kick-off this one on Saturday. Leicester doing really, really well at the moment. Portsmouth mid-table. Conor, very quickly, how do you think this one's going to go?
Only 4 points separating them. Gab has illustrated very articulately, I must say, the positives of Mousinho and his tactical adaptability as well. I think he's proven himself to be a very, very astute manager at this level. I'm going to go for a 1-1.
1-1 would be a good point for Portsmouth. Score prediction, Leicester-Portsmouth, please, Gab.
I'm going to go with 2-1 to Leicester, maybe with Leicester's individual quality just shining through in this one.
Yeah, I think I'll go for a 2-0 as well. And producer Seb has reminded me that we need to do our fourfold for Saturday's 3 p.m. fixtures, which I nearly forgot. They are on a sheet a couple of pages back. Birmingham Hull. I'm going to pick out a Birmingham win for that, Gab, because I feel like Chris Davis needs to turn things around. I think the results haven't been great lately, but I think there's enough individual quality for Birmingham to beat Hull at home. Do you want to have a selection from the other 3 PMs? Or completely disagree with me?
No, I'm going to stick with that as well. I think Stansfield and Kyogo, if they can forge a partnership, which they're starting to do, I think that could really help us. In terms of the other games, I would pick out Coventry. I think you'll get a home win. I'm going to go with Stoke. And Conor, would you like to pick out one?
Stoke to beat Wrexham, that is, at home, yeah.
How many have we got left?
We've got one more for you, mate.
We've got one more. Is it the West Brom game? I'll go for West Bromwich Albion 0, Preston North End 1.
Preston North End win. So we've got Preston, Stoke, Coventry and Birmingham to win as our fourfold. And make sure you stay tuned on Friday because we're going to do our extra show on Middlesbrough Ipswich. That should be a cracking game on Friday night. Conor, Gab, thank you very much for joining me. Get your thoughts on the managers in the comments below. Who do you think is going to be the next manager to go in the Championship? Like and subscribe while you're there, but we'll see you next time.